The crowd erupted, fans screamed, cameras flashed, and then a figure lunged at Kirk Frost, knocking him off balance. The energy in the air changed from excitement to sheer panic as security rushed in. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. What happened in those few seconds left everyone in shock? Was it a random attack K, or was it something deeper, something personal? Why did it happen now, when rumors about Kirk's departure from Love and D Hip Hop were already circulating? Fans are going crazy over rumors circulating online. Some claim it was a crazy fan seeking revenge, while others think it was a planned act of retaliation connected to the drama behind the scenes. But what's the real story? Stay tuned, because what we're about to reveal will change everything. Kirk Frost had built his entire career on drama, so nothing could have prepared him for what happened that night. It was supposed to be just another public appearance, a typical night out. He had been keeping a low profile ever since the rumors about his The Love and D Hip Hop exit began making waves. Fans were talking, Thebladoos were on fire, and everyone wanted to know the truth. Kirk, however, had remained silent, allowing the rumors to run wild. Perhaps this was his mistake. Or perhaps it had only fueled the fire, because what happened next was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. The event was packed with a mix of industry insiders, influencers, and die-hard Love and D Hip Hop fans gathered. KP was moving through the venue as usual. His name still carried weight despite the controversies he had his devoted fans. But there was tension in the air, and something felt off. Earlier that day, Rasheeda had warned him to be careful because people were angry with Kirk. She claimed that his whole V1 situation made them feel something. He dismissed it, thinking she was being dramatic, but in retrospect, perhaps he should have paid attention. The first indication of trouble came when he saw a group of fans observing him a little too intently. At first, he didn't think much of it because he was accustomed to people staring and pointing. There was something different about these people. They weren't just fans. He could see it in their faces. One of them, a man in his late 20s, had a look in his eyes that suggested something was going on. At that moment, Kirk's phone buzzed in his pocket, sending him a text from an unknown number. He scowled, and his eyes darted back to the crowd, scanning faces to see if anyone had just sent him that message. His gut told him that this wasn't just some internet troll playing games. His heart began to race, but he forced himself to ignore it because this was a public event and nothing bad could happen here. Suddenly, as Kirk was shaking hands with someone and acting like an unconcerned reality star, a man from the crowd pushed through the security barrier. There was no warning, no shouting, no threats, just a sudden violent movement. An arm swinging, a fist flying, and before Kirk could react, pain exploded across his face, sending him stumbling backward. Kirk barely had time to process what was happening before security finally gained control and tackled the man to the ground, hitting him as he struggled. His words, "You ruined a very thing and you lied," sent a chill through the crowd. Security swarmed, but the attacker wasn't done. He lunged again, trying to grab Kirk, shouting something that was lost in the chaos. Cameras flashed, capturing every second, phones were up recording, and within minutes the footage would be everywhere. Personal blood trickled from the corner of Kirk's mouth. His mind raced, wondering who this guy was and what he meant when he said ruined everything. Before he could even gather himself, the police were on the scene, pushing through the onlookers. And the man was still screaming as they pulled him away. "Tell the truth, Kirk. You know what he did?" In an instant, Rasheeda was by his side, her face tight with worry. Her voice was urgent, but he barely heard her. He wiped the blood from his lip while he winced. The attacker was still shouting in the background, his words becoming more frantic as they pushed him into a squad car. "You can't hide forever." Later that night, Kirk exchanged a look with Rasheeda, both of whom knew that this wasn't over. If anything, this was just the beginning. The realization that the cameras were still rolling. The internet was already going crazy with speculation, and this wasn't just an attack. This was a message, but from whom and why? No. The police started asking questions. He had been in the business long enough to know when something was just internet noise, but this felt different. Someone wanted to make a point, and they had used a public attack to send their first warning. A new message appeared as he stared at his phone. The footage was everywhere on Instagram, Twitter, and gossip blogs. Clips of the attack were already receiving millions of views, but that wasn't what had Kirk worried. Instead, it was the dozens of direct messages from burner accounts. This time, it wasn't a burner account. Instead, it was an old friend Kirk hadn't spoken to in years. "They're coming for you. You need to leave town." Kirk's hands tightened around the phone as he read the message again. His heart pounded in his ears. This wasn't some random troll. Rather, it was someone who knew something, someone who had been close enough to the situation to send a warning. Of course, Kirk had many enemies in the industry, but this felt Rasheeda's voice brought him back to reality. She was gripping the steering wheel and staring at him with a mixture of anger and concern. "Kirk, we need to talk." She had been silent since the attack, but he could tell she was holding something significant. He sighed, locked his phone, and looked at her. "Go ahead," he muttered, rubbing his jaw where the punch had landed. Who was that man? Enche commanded. He knew Yo Kirk. He wasn't just some crazy fan. What the hell was going on? Rasheeda scoffed and shook her head, saying, "I have a bad feeling about this. Kirk, you just got attacked in front of the entire world. This isn't just a bad feeling. This is serious S, and now you're getting messages telling you to leave town." Kirk hesitated before flipping his phone around so she could see the moment she read the name. Widened? "Wait, you're still in contact with him?" Kirk shook his head, saying, "No, I haven't spoken to him in years." This came out of nowhere. Rasheeda let out a sharp breath and gripped the wheel more tightly. "Kirk, you need to start talking because I'm telling you right now, I don't like where this is headed." Kirk leaned back in his seat, rubbing his hands over his face. He wasn't even sure where to begin. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Frost's stomach twisted as he scrolled through the articles. Everyone was speculating about what had happened, but no one had any real answers. The police had remained silent about the identity of the attacker, and no official statement had been made as of yet. But that didn't stop the internet from going wild with theories. Some said the attack was a revenge plot from someone Kirk had crossed in the past, while others claimed it was a publicity stunt to keep his name in the news following rumors of his termination. But then there were the darker theories, the ones that struck a little too close to home. This goes deeper than just a fan losing control. There are whispers that Kirk has been involved in something dangerous and behind the scenes. The attack was a warning, and as he read the comments, his breath caught in his throat. Before he could think too much about it, his phone rang from an unknown number, and his heart skipped a beat. He nearly didn't respond, but something told him he needed to say hello. His voice was horrifyingly quiet, and then a deep voice came through the line. It was low, calm, almost too calm, and you should have listened. Kirk's breath caught as the voice ignored his question. "You think you can just walk away, Andy, that there won't be consequences?" A chill went down his spine. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said with a slow laugh. "Oh, you will soon." Later that afternoon, Kirk and Rasheeda met with the police. They had called him in for questioning, not as a suspect, but as a victim. They wanted to know if he recognized the man who had attacked him, if he had any enemies, and if he had received any threats. Kirk kept his answers ambiguous because he wasn't ready to reveal everything just yet. But something about the way the officers looked at him made him uneasy because they knew more than they were letting on. Mr. Frost, flipping through a folder of documents. One of the detectives finally said, "Your attacker's name is Jason Carter. Does that thing mean anything to you? You, Kirk's Blue Ram M. Cold Jason Carter?" He hadn't heard that name in years. Rasheeda shot Kirk a look, sensing his reaction, but Kirk couldn't speak. His mind was already racing, piecing together Jason Carter of all the people. The detective carefully examined Kirk's background, looking into his car. He's not just some crazy fan. In fact, he has never been involved in the love and D-hip-hop fandom at all. He leaned forward, but he did have a connection to you. Kirk swallowed hard, wondering what kind of connection it was. The detective slid a piece of paper across the table. A mugshot offed Jason Carter's face, and he stared back at him, looking older but still recognizable. The detective said, "And from what we gathered, he blames you for it." Rasheeda gasped, covering her mouth. Kirk's chest tightened. He couldn't breathe, and he wasn't working alone. He couldn't breathe, and he wasn't working alone. The detective's words echoed in Kirk's mind as his fingers clenched into fists beneath the table. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. He blamed you for it. Jason Carter's name brought back memories Kirk had buried deep, ones he never thought would resurface. Rasheeda was still staring at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Kirk swallowed hard, shaking his head. It's not what you thin. The detective didn't flinch, son. Why don't you tell us what itis? Kirk ran a hand over his face and exhaled sharply. Was threatening to attack Kirk in public, which was something he couldn't ignore. He looked at Rasheeda, whose eyes begged for the truth. And at last, he spoke. Years ago, Jason and I were friends, and we did business together. But things went horribly wrong. The detective exchanged glances with his partner, and Kirk hesitated, his mind racing. He cleared his throat. Jason got caught up in something illegal, something I warned him about. I tried to leave before it was too late, but when the detective nodded slowly as if piecing everything together, and now years later, he's out and coming for you. Kirk felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just a grudge. It wasn't just some old rivalry being reignited. It was revenge. The interrogation room felt stuffy, but Kirk forced himself to concentrate because he needed answers. Do you know where he is now, Kirk? Kirk's jaw tightened as the detective leaned back and tapped a file against the table. He's gone off the grid. No known residents, no recent credit card transactions. The only reason we know he was in town is because of the attack. You're telling me you have no idea where he is? No idea what his next move is, he said, narrowing his eyes. But Mr. Frost, if he really is after you, you need to be careful because if last night was just a warning. You will shake his head the next time you, Rasheeda, took a sharp breath and gripped Kirk's arm, saying, we need to leave town. Kirk shook his head, saying, no, that's exactly what he wants. He wants me scared and running. I'm not giving him that. Rasheeda's voice broke Kirk, saying, this isn't a game. This man tried to hurt you in public. He's sending you threats. What happens if he comes back? What happens if a sharp knock at the door cuts tear off? The detective took the phone, sir. You need to see this. They watched security footage from the previous night from a new angle that the public had not yet seen in the grainy black and white video. They saw Jason Carter lurking close to the venue's entrance long before the attack. But that wasn't the worst part. There was another figure next to him wearing a hoodie, their faces hidden. The two men spoke briefly, and then the hooded figure handed over something. A small object barely visible. Kirk's stomach dropped. The detective followed his instructions, and when the image cleared up, Kirk felt the detective barely had time to react before Kirk was already out the door. Rasheeda was right behind him as they ran to the parking lot. Kirk fumbled for his keys as a terrifying thought consumed him. What if Jason had access to his office? That meant he didn't even finish the thought before speeding down the road. Rasheeda was the first to speak, her voice shaking a key to what Kirk didn't answer. He didn't have to. He already knew because that key was to his office. The drive felt like an eternity, but when they finally arrived at the building, Kirk's worst fear was confirmed. The door to his office was open. Not kicked in or forced, but unlocked as if someone had walked right in. Rasheeda gripped the dashboard, her voice frantic, and Kirk said, slow down. What if he's still there? Kirk's hands tightened around the wheel. Then I'll do with him, but deep down he wasn't sure what he'll do with him. Rasheeda gasped when he saw a single black envelope sitting in the middle of his desk. He swallowed hard and reached for it, his hands shaking as he opened it, and pulled out a folded piece of paper with 4 words scrolled across it in red ink. This isn't over, Kirk. Rasheeda took a shaky step back. Kirk clenched his jaw, his mind spinning. Jason had broken in, gone through his things, and left him a message. But before Kirk could respond to that question, his phone buzzed with another unknown number. He hesitated for just a second before responding. Hello, silence. Then a chilling voice said, enjoy the memories you have because soon that's all you'll have. Be called disconnected. And Kirk stood frozen, his breath shallow. Rasheeda clutched his arm, her face pale. At that moment, it became terrifyingly clear that Jason Carter wasn't just back to destroy Kirk's entire life. The sea disconnected, the eerie silence that lingered in the air like a ghostly whisper. His heart pounded so hard that it felt like it might burst out of his chest. Rasheeda's nails dug into his arm as she whispered, shaking Kirk. What does he mean? What memories? Kirk swallowed hard, his mind racing. Jason wasn't just pursuing him. He was uncovering something bigger, something that had been buried for years. The office break-in, the cryptic message, and the terrifying phone call. Jason wasn't just making threats. He was playing a game that Kirk wasn't sure he could win. Before he could respond, Rasheeda's grip tightened and there was a knock on the door. Both of them froze, but it was too late. Kirk took slow, deliberate steps toward the door, his heart pounding in his ears, and reached for the knob. He hesitated for a moment before yanking it open. The hallway was empty, but as Kirk exhaled in relief, he noticed a small, unmarked package sitting on the floor. Rasheeda took a step back, but Kirk couldn't ignore it. With trembling hands, he bent down and picked it up. After carefully removing the brown paper to reveal a USB drive, he and Rasheeda exchanged a tense look before he went to his laptop and plugged it in. His breath caught as a single video file, no title, no description. Just a timestamp from earlier that day appeared on the screen. Kirk hesitated just a second before clicking on it. And what they saw sent a shiver down their spines. Security footage of their home. Rasheeda gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Oh my God, the footage showed the front of their home from an angle they didn't, recognizing that the camera wasn't theirs. And that someone had been watching them. Kirk's stomach twisted as he watched himself and Rasheed leave the house earlier that day. A few moments after they had driven off, Jason entered the frame. He wasn't wearing a mask and wasn't hiding in the shadows because he wanted them to see him. He approached the front door and tried the handle, which was locked, but instead of breaking in, he did something far more sinister. He turned to the camera, grinning and moving his lips. But there was no audio. Rasheeda's voice was barely audible above a whisper, and Kirk's hands trembled as he stared at the screen. He said, "You should have let me in." A sickening realization swept over them. Jason hadn't just broken into Kirk's office. He had been at their house waiting to watch Kirk slam the laptop shut, his entire body rigid. That's it. We're leaving. Rasheeda grabbed her bag without hesitation. Where are we even supposed to go? Kirk's jaw clenched. Somewhere he won't find us. They hurried out of the office. Rasheeda gripped her phone and said, "I'm calling the police." But as soon as she dialed it, a new message from an unknown number vibrated. She slowly opened it and her blood ran cold. It was a live photo of them taken just seconds ago from inside their car. Rasheeda dropped the phone, her voice a strangled whisper. Kirk's grip tightened on the wheel. His knuckles turned white as his mind raced with how and where. And before he could react, a car slammed into them. The force behind them sent them skidding across the road, tired of screaming. Rasheeda screamed as Kirk struggled to control the car, his heart pounding in terror. Jason wasn't just following them. He was pursuing them. Kirk yanked the wheel in an attempt to veer into a side street. But the other car was unrelenting, trapping them with nowhere to go. The final impact sent them spiraling out of control, and Kirk barely had time to brace before the world turned upside down. Glass broke, metal crunched, and then darkness. The first thing Kirk noticed as he gradually regained consciousness was sirens. His head throbbed and his vision became blurry. Rasheeda was slumped against the seat, moaning. As he turned his head, panic shot through him. They were still in the car, but where was Jason? At that moment, flashing red and blue lights illuminated the wreckage. Officers rushed toward them. Voices shouted. They were pulled from the car, and paramedics swarmed them, asking if they were okay. But Kirk wasn't paying attention. Jason was gone when the detective from earlier appeared. His face said, "Grim, Mr. Frost, you're lucky to be alive." Kirk's voice sounded like a horse. "Did you catch him?" The detective shook his head, saying, "He was gone by the time we got here." "But we'll find him." Kirk clenched his fists, wanting to believe that. But he knew deep down that Jason wasn't done, and the next when he returned, Jason wasn't done, and the next when he returned,